Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Strategy Sessions. I am Heather Singleton, Principal Consultant of Strategic Public Relations Consulting, where we are supporting dreams, creating partnerships, and building brands. I'm so excited to start the month of March off with this new series that we are embarking upon, and it's called Be Your Own Goals. And so when you think about social media and what people are like using as hashtag goals. A lot of times you see all these things that are monetarily like driven, or all of these vacations and all the houses and cars and all these other things, and that stuff's great. I love a good house. I love a new car. I love all the things that God has blessed me with, but sometimes we have to take a look inside of ourselves and also inside of what's connected to us so that we can develop our own goals and our own visions and our own plans. So, for the kickoff of this series, we are talking about personal philanthropy. And I'm so elated to have my very good friend, Jamesha Shackerford, with the Central Carolina Community Foundation, joining us to talk about philanthropy from the lens of being a member of the BIPOC community. So, Jamesha, welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited about this conversation. Even how you did the intro talking about being your own goals. I think it's so easy, especially in this COVID world or even in the social media world, for our focus to be for us to visually set our goals based on what we see around us. But those should be set from within, wherever you feel like you're being led to do and impact the community. It should be led from that place and not necessarily a place of trying to get to somewhere where someone else is going. So that really is inspiring me. And I think that, this conversation is much needed, but I'm excited to talk about philanthropy. As Heather mentioned, I work at the Central Carolina Community Foundation here. Go CCCF. Woo woo. The foundation, I'm a program officer. So I tell people I get the honor of, in the fun or pleasure, however you want to say it, of helping to steward dollars into the community in a couple different ways, some through actual grant funding, some through scholarship funding. And one of the things that we're going to talk about today is the BIPOC Book Club, which is like funneling resources to community members. So I'm super excited to be a part of this conversation.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for that great introduction of yourself and the work that you do, because it doesn't go unnoticed. I get the privilege of watching you thrive in the community, whether it's your own personal philanthropy or in your day-to-day work. So I am grateful to have you on board. So you mentioned the BIPOC Book Club, and I want to give our viewers just a little bit of context and background. So I think it was late last year, maybe August, something like that. Jamesha came to me with an idea that they had at the Central Carolina Community Foundation that targeted allowing a safe space for fundraisers of color. And when that notion came about, I was super excited. I was like, y'all, let's do this. This is a great opportunity because there are so many fundraisers of color in the community here in the Midlands area, but also the executive directors. And sometimes we need that safe space. So, Jamesha, talk to us a little bit about how it came about and the partnership with AFP, and then also why you thought it was necessary.
Well, I can do that, but Heather, if you don't mind, I want to take a little liberty to take a step back and first talk about philanthropy and how I view that, and then how that plays into the BIPOC book club. So, if you follow me on social media, if you don't follow me, Jamesha Shackerford, but oftentimes when I'm in the community or just talking with folks about philanthropy, I say it's the love of mankind, it's the love of humankind. So that's what philanthropy is. It doesn't necessarily have a dollar amount tied to it. It doesn't always have something tangible tied to it. Sometimes it's a conversation helping people steward their resources. If they have a lot of resources that they have available and they want to give out, that's philanthropy. So I want to really, trying to just ground a conversation in that notion that when we say philanthropy, we don't necessarily mean just all money. Although, to be philanthropic, I highly encourage you to give to organizations right here in the Midlands that are doing really good work. But wanted to kind of lay that basis for that. And then relating to the BIPOC book club. And then for those of you who are watching this, you're like, what is BIPOC? The way that, the BIPOC is categorized, I guess you would say, or defined is the better word, is Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So that's what we mean by BIPOC. So last year, we had a conversation at the Community Foundation after working with one of our consultants, Rachel, and Rachel developed this book called, what is it, Duct Tape? No More Excuses.
No More Duct Tape Fundraising.
Yeah, No More Duct Tape Fundraising. Get me right, Heather. But it's basically talks through the different steps of being a fundraiser, some of the things that you need to know, some of the things that if you're doing that you probably shouldn't be doing anymore. And we've always had this conversation at the foundation, specifically, I know with my boss, Erin Johnson, who's our VP for Community Investment. We've had this conversation about how do we be more intentional with supporting communities of color, and then looking at the nonprofit field, how do we support, folks who are working for nonprofit, who are people of color. And from working with Rachel, we had an instant opportunity. Like, hey, Rachel developed this book. Rachel has worked with us on many different things, but she developed this book about fundraising. We said, hey, we should do something for BIPOC fundraiser in our community. We know right now COVID is crazy. We know that organizations are having to really hunker down on finding different resources to be able to to give back to their organization. And we also know that a lot of the brunt of that work sometimes falls on people of color to get that done, especially if you're a person of color who works in a fundraising position. So with everything going on, we wanted to provide some resources for them. So we said, it's fundraising. We can't do it without our local AFP. We're a firm believer in collaboration. At the foundation, we don't believe that we should be doing things in silos. Any community should be doing anything in silos. Oftentimes, some communities have to because, there's no resources there, or there's no one who wants to partner with them to get it done. But at the foundation, we really try to make sure that we focus on collaboration as much as possible. So we reached out to our local AFP, which is the Association of Fundraising Professionals. And we said, hey, we are actually want to do something for your market. We want to do something for local fundraiser, BIPOC fundraisers. So we got a chance to kind of build together, share goals. And we were trying to figure out who in our community could lead this. We know we needed to be a person of color to lead this conversation. That was really important to us, especially if we wanted to create a safe space for people of color to really talk about their lived experience while being fundraiser. So we had a couple of people in mind, and I was like, Heather, she the one. She is the one.
I'm out here.
Yeah. You really were the one, because you had the experience as a person of color yourself with fundraising, right? And the work that you used to do for United Way and all the other volunteer work that you do at other organizations. And then also you had the ability to learn how to train people, to get people engaged. So that was really important for us. But it came down to really creating a space for BIPOC people who are going through this lived experience of having to ask for money from typically, most nonprofits, I'm generalizing right here, but I would say most nonprofits, donor base, are predominantly made up of white people, white males, especially there when you're starting to look at the high percentage of people who are giving to those organizations. And one thing I do want to bring clarification to is Black people give. I mean, there's been studies that show that, Black families are the most philanthropic individuals in the nation, right? But historically, what you've seen in nonprofits, I could say specifically from the Midlands area, is that majority of their donor base are really white. So here you have this BIPOC person who may have gone through their own experience of, just living in a marginalized community, in a marginalized subset of the community. And you have these individuals, even if they grew up wealthy, still being perceived as being marginalized, right? So you have these individuals who are having to now go out to these donors, like I said, typically white male donors, asking for these dollars. So then it comes to a whole idea of I kind of have to prove myself before I even like for you even hear what I have to say about this organization. So we wanted to create a space for all of our BIPOC people to talk about those experiences, but not just to talk, to figure out how to take it to the next level and actually find ways to navigate and negotiate through that, whether it's them having a conversation with their supervisors to talk about what their experience is going after these dollars, whether it is them themselves, I guess I can say that word, that phrase, coming to a point where they're honestly like, you know what, I am worthy. My skill set is there. How I articulate about my organization is there. So I'm going to walk into this meeting with the mindset of knowing that I can not sell my organization, but I can communicate the need of my organization, right? So our goal was to help break down some barriers that BIPOC fundraisers experience that fundraisers who are not BIPOC do not experience. And that was a long answer.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, it gave lots of detail and depth, and that's what we need. I think one of the greatest things that we take for granted in society in general is just like what was talked about as the scarcity mindset, right? Like, I don't have enough, so I can't give. And that was one of the things that we talked about in the book club, and it really struck me. And I just remember one of the book clubbers who just said, that's something that I grew up with, like that we won't have enough. But even in Rachel's book, and just to give Rachel, a shout out for the story that she told, she talked about the homeless individual, or excuse me, the individual experiencing homelessness. I will clarify. And she was just telling his story about how every time this one family gave him something, if they were at a restaurant and gave him like leftovers, or if they gave him money, he took it back to the other individuals who were experiencing homelessness that he hung out with, because he knows that more is coming and he's got to share what he has. And even in that moment, he was able to be philanthropic. So even from the point of that story, why do you think that individual philanthropy should be a goal for everyone?
Because everyone should do it, right? It's like, no.
Easy answer, right?
Let's do it. No, I take this back to the definition of philanthropy, which is the love of mankind, or humankind, however you rephrase that word. I think just knowing that it's all of our responsibilities to show love, right? And it can be hard sometimes to show love to people, especially when you don't feel like love is being shown to you or your people or whatever it may look like. But I think that in order for us as a community to grow, we must be philanthropic in our own way. I think the key to being philanthropic is getting out of your head about what that looks like. Because as I mentioned earlier, philanthropy is not tied to a dollar. No one said that philanthropy means money. And I think that that's what narrative that the world, the social media, everything, media really like pushes, is that the only time you hear about someone being philanthropic is when they're dropping $1 million check.
Right.
But I think that there's ways to be philanthropic in your community, and the importance of it is that you get to change your community. You get to actually see how you're investing in your community is making a difference. I say, if you want to see a different community, then invest in your community, right? Because we can't expect to be in a community and don't invest in it, because nothing is going to change, right? And our hope, I would think, everyone's hope is for their community to be thriving in a place where they can raise their family, or they can be in a family, or whatever it may look like for you in your own individual life. So I kind of, I make it my call to action to really dispel any sort of idea around philanthropy, with it being that tied to a dollar, but really making sure people know that it's giving of your time, talents, or treasures. Granted, like I said, we need your dollars. Nonprofits need your dollars.
Please and thank you.
They do. But thinking about how you can use your time to give back, like you think about this COVID world, is there an after-school program that's offering online tutoring that you can give back to, right? Is there a nonprofit in your community that needs some sort of online volunteer support, or whatever it may look like? Again, it's a way to be invested in your community. And it's a way for you to take action about actually changing your community and making it a better place.
That's awesome. Awesome point, because there are so many different kinds of ways that we can show philanthropy. And I know that you have to hop off because you have another engagement, but we're going to dive into that in just the next few moments. So, Jamesha, thank you so much for sharing with us and for just being yourself authentically. We appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you. I do want to add one more thing before I go. If you are on this call watching right now and you're like, hey, I don't know where to start at, here are two resources that you can start at. Reach out to me. And Heather, you can drop my information in the chat later on. And then, you can always reach out to Heather too. If you're trying to figure out, okay, I want to give back. I want to give back to our community, but I just don't know how. Or, the ways in which I can do that. You have people who work in the field of philanthropy, or even community activists who may not necessarily work at a foundation or whatever, but who knows the needs of the community. So if that is you right now, you're trying to figure out how to give back and just trying to figure out what it looks like, reach out to us. We're happy to put you, to direct you in the best way that we know how. And if we don't have necessarily what you need, we can definitely put you in connection with someone who does. But I, definitely want you to give that call to action, to don't let your not knowing how stop you from being philanthropic. We all can make a difference. And then just some very practical ways too, out of my mind that I know, is in May, we have Midlands Gives, which is a 24-hour giving day where over 400 organizations participate. So you can easily find out organizations that you want to be able to support financially if you would like. And that website is www.midlands, so that's Midlands with an S, gives.org. It's a great place to search organizations. And then August is Black Philanthropy Month.
Yes.
So I know not all Black people are watching this, but if you are Black and you are watching it, or even if you're not, because I think Black Philanthropy Month is for everyone, but it's a time to really amplify the stories of Black giving, right? Because we don't hear those stories a lot at all. If we do hear about Black people in philanthropy, we hear about them on the receiving end. So it's our job in the community, everyone's job, not just Black people, but everyone's job to redefine that narrative and really highlight the Black philanthropists that are doing amazing work. So again, those two resources are midlandsgives.org, where you can find over 400 plus organizations. It has different search filters. You can search by category, like human service, education, whatever floats your boat. You can even search by Black-led and Black benefiting organizations, which I'm super excited about that feature. And then August, amplify Black philanthropy. If you check out the hashtag BPM or BPM 365, you get to hear the amazing stories about Black philanthropy that happens across the nation all year long. So those are two resources that I would like to leave you with. Heather, thank you so much for having this important conversation. I do have to hop off, but I want to say thank you. Continue to amplify the stories of philanthropy and continue to show people that goals should be set from an internal place, not an external. So excited about all that you're doing. And have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye. So, guys, again, Jamesha had to hop off, but I want to expound a little bit on what she was mentioning in her conversation. So, she talked about what I like to call the 3 T's, and that is time, talent, and treasure. So, how exactly do you become a philanthropist in any of these methods? When you're talking about your time, that is often seen as sweat equity. Sweat equity is what you think of when you think of like volunteer opportunities. So if you're in search for a food bank that needs some food sorting, if you want to help rebuild a house through your local Habitat for Humanity, this is how you can best give your time. A lot of times you can look to your local United Ways, and they have opportunities that are available for you. I actually was just scrolling on my own timeline a little while ago, and I saw that United Way of the Midlands has a need for contactless delivery drivers for the Meals on Wheels program here in Richland County. So when you see examples like that, those are great opportunities for you to spend your lunch break doing something that's going to benefit the whole community. And then there are also opportunities that are available on the weekends, in the evenings. There are a plethora of different ways that you can get involved and give back. The second thing is your talent. So this one is kind of new for a lot of us, especially some people of color. Now I see more and more people of color getting involved in this method, but your talents include your skill set. So there are a ton of nonprofits out there who are looking for folks to serve on committees, serving on councils, and serving on boards of directors. So there are a lot of great chances for you to get involved based upon your knowledge. I know for myself personally, I'm excited about an opportunity to join the committee for the South Carolina Alzheimer's Association. And that's very near and dear to my heart because of my grandmother who passed away, unfortunately, due to Alzheimer's disease. So for me, I can give them an opportunity to share their story and their mission and their cause through my networks because of the talent that I am able to bring to the table. And finally, your treasure. And Jamesha talked about this, but of course, philanthropy doesn't necessarily have to have a dollar amount, but dollars do matter. Dollars stretch and dollars assist these nonprofits with carrying out their mission. Not just the dollars that are restricted, but also the ones that are a part of what my good friend Kendra says is blind giving. And with blind giving, you're just giving the organization the money because you trust the organization and know that they're going to do the right things with the funds that they're receiving. So you don't have to be $1,000, $100,000, $1,000,000 giver to be a philanthropist. And I think that a lot of times in our communities, locally and abroad, like we think that you have to have all this money in order to give, but you can write a check for $100. You can give $10. Jamesha mentioned Midlands Gives, and the minimum amount that you can give to an organization through that program is $10. So it doesn't take a whole lot of money to be a philanthropist, but if you can give of your time, of your talent, or of your treasure, that makes a difference. Even on social media, when you see nonprofits and other faith-based organizations and other organizations that are not for profit, that are trying to get the word out because they need volunteers, but you may not have the time in that moment or in that season of your life, feel free to share it because you never know who's going to view your timeline. You never know who's going to come across the post that you're sharing. So your time, your talent, and your treasure are 3 easy ways for you to get involved and give back in the community. As you're setting your personal goals, keep in mind that not only do you benefit the community, but also that's whole life prosperity. That's you giving of yourself cheerfully and wonderfully. So keep in mind that philanthropy is for everyone. But even as you go on to your journey of finding the nonprofit that works best for you, I want you guys to keep 3 things in mind. Okay, first and foremost, show love. So when you decide that you want to support ABC Nonprofit Incorporated, make sure that when you're showing love, you're showing up. You're showing up prepared and you're passionate about the work that you're doing. Whatever nonprofit you decide to partner with, it is so crucial that you actually have a passion for the work that is happening. So many times people will join boards or they will be a part of an organization just because someone asked or for other reasons, but there is no passion behind it. And even though you're showing up, you're not fully there. You're not being fruitful. So keep in mind that when you're showing up and you're showing love, you're exuding your passion. With that in mind, the second point that I want to make is to show up. So when you're there, be fully there. When you're there and you are looking to serve on a board of directors, if someone is asking you to read something before a meeting, be there and be prepared. Read the material, read the supporting documents. Even when you're looking to volunteer, like reading with kids. It's probably not a good idea to be on your phone or your electronics while you're supporting these children, but people need you to be present and they need you to be in place. And that's important as well. And then finally, show grace. The nonprofit world is a lot to take in because there are a lot of moving pieces. There are fundraising pieces, there are programming pieces, there are day-to-day logistics pieces, and all of these things come together to make sure that our communities are best served. So when you're taking your time, your talent, and your treasure to your favorite local nonprofit, please keep in mind that there are folks who are working tirelessly, sometimes with little salary, to make sure that the vision is carried out, that the mission and the values are being kept intact. So when you're being a part of our philanthropic community, please keep those three things in mind, because it's very important that when you show up, you're showing up for real and fully and authentically. So I do want to conclude for the evening, but I wanted to make sure that you guys got those helpful tips, and hopefully you can glean from my conversation with you and my conversation with Jamesha. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. As you're setting your goals, make sure that you are fulfilled and that your passion is showing. So we thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. I'm super, super excited about next week. We are going to have Anitra Smalls with us, and she is a guru when it comes to personal and business credit. And so for those of you who are looking to start a business, or you're looking to sustain a healthy and thriving business, Anitra is going to talk to us a little bit about how to sustain our credit scores, how to build from the ground up, and what we can do to be financially secure as we continue to set goals. So again, I am Heather Singleton. Please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. I am on all social media platforms. You can find SPRC at Facebook at SPRC, on Facebook at Strategic PRC. You can find me on Instagram at that Heather Pope. You can find me on Twitter at Strategic PRC. And then you can also find me on YouTube at Strategic PR Consulting. And if you are in need of services, if you are in need of building a brand or creating partnerships or doing anything that's in between, please make sure you visit my website. That's strategicprconsulting.com. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you so that we can figure out how we can be strategic together. So thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. And as always, make sure that you're strategic in everything you do. Have a good night.